The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our special presentation, The Power of Effective Data Governance. Note to self, hide all screen items that come up, but today I'd like to start with a few introductions. Our first speaker is John Ladley, a highly experienced advisor and advocate for organizations looking for sustainable value from information and data. John is also a best-selling author. John's experience and knowledge is balanced between treating data as an essential component of modern business and economies and the practical solution of business problems. John's books are an authoritative source for data and information management and data governance. John is also recognized as the authority and speaker on topics such as enterprise information management, data monetization, information and data architecture, and data governance, just to mention a few. John has extensive experience across many industries and is currently examining the role of the Chief Data Officer and assisting several organizations with data strategies and data governance. And it's a pleasure, John, to have you with us today. Our second speaker is Jeff Giles. Jeff is Sandhill's enterprise architect and has been a long-time enterprise data architect, data governance specialist who's been addressing the issue of the convergence of data governance frameworks and data catalogs during the past several years. You are, of course, listening to Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants. In today's presentation, which is being recorded, we'll be speaking in more detail about the power of effective data governance and the importance of data acumen to stay ahead of the curve and the ramifications of data as a business asset. And so with that, let me go ahead and pass you over to John to take the next segment away. So John, over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you see and hear okay, folks?
Yes, we can. We can see you, your screen, and hear you.
Oh, and you got the screen. So, oh, heck, it means I have to do this.
You're on
well,
the ball. You're on. It's all under you, John.
All right. Well, may the fourth be with me, and away I go here. See, we were trying to figure out how to work that into the talk today, and I already did it on the first slide. Yeah, we're going to talk about data governance here. I want to kind of present the big picture of the current state, because data governance is in flux. The definition hasn't changed. How we're trying to do it is shifting. How we continue to try to redefine it is an ongoing issue. And what makes us successful or not are things that we're learning as time goes on. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about why it's so important and why it continues to be even more and more important. Lots of things are going on there right now. And then I don't like doing anything without being a little bit prescriptive. So I will continue to give you some advice here as we go along. We'll have plenty of time for questions after this, and there's a chat to dump your questions into for that, and we'll get to those after both speakers. So the big picture, this is Martha. Martha is a top data job person somewhere. Could be a CDO, could be a director of data, whatever, could be applications person over the data warehouse, but she's the top data job, and she's got an email from the CEO, and the CEO wants to, I want to report on the ROI of this data stuff, or if you can't do that, I want it outsourced, and I want, how you're going to go about doing that. Now, for those of us in data type things, we go, oh, wow, people certainly are not going to do that because data is really important, and we see that more and more. However, I do not want anyone to lose sight of the fact that from a CEO viewpoint, it has to add value. Everything in an organization has to accretively go towards the organization's goals. That has not changed. That never will change. There is no such thing as doing something for convenience. All right, so I wanted to set that baseline for the rest of this conversation. Now, does the CEO understand data governance? Probably not. That's another thing we're going to talk about. But this is a very typical environment that we see here. And why is data governance so hard? Why is this letter showing up? All right. Well, there's an awful lot of balls in the air. There's an awful lot of spinning plates. Organizations are hammered with external issues. Okay. I don't have to read every single one of those to you. And data is at the forefront now. Very few organizations that are going to put their hand up and say, no, data is merely the exhaust of my enterprise. We're not going to worry about it. If you don't do data, you're going to be struggling as an organization. But that means considering the external drivers of monetization, which is doing something of highly visible value and cash flow from data, not just profitable new things, but also cutting costs, managing risks. There is the compliance aspect where every state government in the United States is now on the verge of a privacy regulation. We have California, we had GDPR in Europe, we just got Iowa or Idaho or somebody, Oregon's on the way, and it's going to go like crazy. Everyone's going to have that. And then we have the whole issue of data and this new world of being data driven and what that really means, and that's creating ethical issues. We have the AI aspect, which is now on everyone's lips right now. There's your reputation of your organization and your impact on your community. Internally, at the same time, on the other side of the coin, it's getting too expensive to do data. I don't care if the the cloud's cheap. Okay, I don't care if SSD is cheap. I don't care if you've outsourced all things to lower labor costs and things like that. We spend too much on doing data stuff right now. We're spending too much. When you really look at all the real numbers in organizations, it's way, way, way too high. All right. You can't always count on your customers to tolerate your data flaws now anymore either. Okay. I've documented several times over the years organizations that have lost significant market share because of data issues and things like that. We have the audits of the aforementioned compliance, so we have all that internal pressure to do things differently. And then we have booking the liability internally, recognizing costs. An organization, whether it's for profit or government or NGO, still has an obligation to its customers or its shareholders to recognize material threats and report them. And we still have to work on that. So this is all really hard. There's a lot of exposure here, and we haven't done a lot of progress. All right. We have to contribute. And if we don't contribute on a macro level to the organization or show that there's value on an incremental basis, then there's this tendency to say, well, that data governance thing worked really nice, and they did it over there in that department, and that's great, and that's terrific. All right. I call that little g, by the way, when we start small and want to work our way big. Some people will call that non-invasive. Some people will call that iterative. Some people will say they're all different things. And to me, it really doesn't matter. You implement the way you need to implement that's going to work for your organization. But if you don't recognize the enterprise-wide concern here of data and your full data supply chain, we'll get to in a minute, you get standardized and department penalized, and you can end up with siloed governance. Okay, we're not used to this level of exposure in the data industry. I mean, that's why we have this the sponsor here of Sandhill, and we're going to be talking about a Compass here in a little bit. This and many other products are reactions to the fact that enterprises need things to be a certain way, and there is a market for that certain way. If you're going to be saying data is an asset, you're going to say you're data driven, you're going to say that data has value, you're asking your organization to do things differently, period. If you just show up, implement your catalog and go at, you have your participation trophy. But that doesn't carry our industry very far, and it doesn't get us a lot of attention, and it doesn't help our organizations. You say, but wait, it's an asset. You must treat it as an asset. Okay, I'm going to lay that challenge back to you data folks on this call. You say it's an asset. You demand your organization treat data like an asset. Do you really know what you're getting into? Assets require care and feeding, mandatory care and feeding. It's not like, well, we really should get a catalog or we really should document our data landscape. No, it means you must do that. And it means you must implement a new business capability, and businesses are very jaded against new things. All right. It means this data must be put to work in a visible, effective manner. If you have inventory, if you're making a product and you have raw materials for that product, it's obvious. All right. If everything you're doing in your organization is data dependent, then it must be obvious that the data is to be taken care of. Okay. And there has to be some sort of management framework that reflects the property of this data and brings the value to light all the time, right? And focusing on isolated data capabilities and ignoring the fact that you have to bring this value to light if you're going to make it an asset is something that we find to be a challenge. You know, saying that you have to have buy-in, I mean, that's a common question I get. John, how do I get buy-in? The fact that you're listening to this class, the fact that you're buying a tool, the fact that you might be talking about a data steward, you have your buy-in now, but that's not enough. You have to connect to value in your organization, all right? Because these are business capabilities. Let's step away from data folks have this wonderful grasp of reality, all right? The fact is that the organization has to have that wonderful grasp of reality as well. Okay, if you're going to formally manage a data asset, you are formally getting into an enterprise mindset, not a big bang enterprise implementation. Please don't confuse mindset with how you implement stuff, okay? But if you're going to say data is an asset, you have immediately adopted an enterprise mindset, all right? An organization doesn't have departmental treasuries. It doesn't have departmental inventory control. It doesn't have departmental HR. So you're not going to have departmental data management and data governance if you want to do it right, all right? If it's an interim step, fine, but the mindset is always there. If you're doing data governance, remember, you're overseeing, you are a control agency, you're an oversight agency of what needs to be done to do things correctly. That's the definition of data governance, all right? If you're doing data management, you're the one that's actually fixing stuff, or you're delivering the report, or you're managing the data, or you're doing the data engineering, or the data science, or the data quality remediation, or something like that. There is a distinct separation of duties here. Now, and this is not rocket science, folks, right? This is not complicated. All complicated systems have divisions of control, all right? There is a split between oversight and execution. It's called separation of duties, all right? If you're going to have data in your vocabulary or as an asset, you now must say, and data folks must say this, you should not ask permission to do governance. You should say, we have to do this. I don't care what you call it. I don't care how we implement it. We'll implement it however it goes that works for this organization, all right? But you must have it. And you must acknowledge you're doing data management anyway. If you're doing a report, you're doing data management. If you're updating a database, you're doing data management, but you need to understand that you are entering a realm of extreme discipline that the organization doesn't have, all right? Because what we're really managing here is a data supply chain. Now, we hear a lot recently about, and if you're going to talk about the power of governance, you have to get past this literacy thing that's coming up the last few years. Because if you look at the definition of literacy, it talks about read, write, and communicate with data. Well, that is the back end of the data supply chain. The data supply chain, you have the engaging part where we get a customer and load their data. We do business with that customer, we operate our organization, we manage our organization by looking at some data and doing some things, and then we improve our organization via analysis or analytics with the data. But only on that lower left part are we worried about literacy in the classical definition of data literacy. The other 80% literacy doesn't cover. It doesn't cover it, it ignores it. So the power of data governance, it is across all of this. Now, does that mean literacy is something we don't do? No. But how do we address that other 80%? It means we need to have the organization understand about the data supply chain. Again, that's the power of data governance. That's the oversight function that will talk about, this is how the supply chain should work, and this is how the principles and the policies and the metrics and the things. Some of you might have worked in logistics. This is logistics for data, managing the logistics for your data, okay? All right, this is the context to think about. If you're going to think about literacy, I also like to use the word acumen here. And if you use the word acumen, you find out that you need to be smarter about how you take care of the data, which is the other 80% of the supply chain, all right? So everyone needs to think about data as part of their jobs, everyone, not just the people printing a report and describing the report or the analysis to somebody. And that's the management, the utilization, all right, the communication, which literacy covers, all right, but then the ramifications and the risks, which includes ethics and compliance and things like that, all right? So it's not just the use, but it's the management. Again, this is why governance is so important, because it's the how do you do that? It's specifying how do you do that. If you don't specify how you're going to do it, it's going to develop organically, localized, and inefficiently, all right? Because it's your entire data supply chain. So when you hear literacy, I also want you to put the word competency in your head, put the word in your head. In that sense, very few people in an organization are truly exhibit data acumen, truly exhibit data literacy. Leadership doesn't have the acumen to understand the data supply chain, all right? They don't have the acumen to understand how important a data strategy is. They don't have the acumen to understand technology talk, all right? Technologists, and by that I mean app dev, operations, and data people. They do not grasp some basic fundamental communication issues. There is a profound illiteracy in the data community about data assets. There's a profound illiteracy in applications development and IT management about data, because you do not grasp simple concepts like someone did a catalog and it's a really good tool, so we're going to get a catalog. Well, you're improperly applying some logic which says, well, if we need to manage our data and therefore we need data standards, therefore we need a data catalog, what you're saying is the business needs A, then B, then C, and that means A implies C. Well, really it doesn't, unless you have profound amounts of business alignment there, okay? And we jump to C a lot. I do a lot of prescriptive stuff in these talks. Okay, so if you're starting on data governance, you're trying to re-energize your data governance, and you're looking at catalogs right now, but you don't have full engagement from leadership, you don't have a full awareness of what you're going to do with that catalog, all right, you are diminishing your chances of success by focusing on the catalog and not focusing on some of the supply chain understanding and competency issues as well, all right? I just yesterday talked to an organization that got a new CIO who was very, very app dev driven and said, we're going to go to microservices so we don't need data management, we don't need data governance, and shut the whole thing down. All right, that still exists, folks, and that is damaging to that organization. Okay, so there's a lot going on right now. Everyone has to get smarter here, not just the business side. We all have to really embrace the nature of this data supply chain and the nature of what governance really touches, all right? It's really important, all right? We're going to do AI. That horse has left the barn. I don't know why people are trying to stop it. We just need to manage it better. But, all that literacy about that stuff's important. But we also have to simultaneously, while we're thinking, is what I'm doing legal? All right? There's no interpretation here. It's either legal or it isn't. As what I'm doing legitimate for competition, all right? It's really easy for a company with a good spreadsheet jockey to beat a company that just spent $10 million on AI still, all right? So what's the competitive situation here? Are we ethical? You can use data ethically. That's a whole other subject to go over, all right? Data is anthropological now. back in the 60s and 70s, we had data processing and data that existed on cards. All right. And then and any other data was a newspaper or a television show. Now we have data in our phones. We have stuff on our phones that is from our work and from our personal life. It is seamless. It is all over the place. Anthropology is the science of how people do peopling. And we are now entered a new phase of human existence, and it's not just a corporate problem. It's now a mashup of individual and corporate and organizational. So this is another reason that we have to embrace the solid enterprise nature of what we're talking about here. All right. It's not just isolated with leaders and decision makers. All right. I talk to a lot of development people who say, I can't do data standards this time because it's going to slow me down. And data standards has never slowed any development team down. There is no data to support that. None, zero. I've looked for it, all right? Okay, managing data debt and adhering to data standards speeds up development. That's the fact, but it's new, it's different, so no one wants to get engaged. Mindset, the mindset here is important. So we want to change our thinking. I've been leading up to these last couple of slides here to change your thinking, all right? First of all, before we get to some of the other things here, the drivers of this are goals must reflect organization strategy. Okay, if you're going to do A implies B implies C, A has to be organization goals, not delivering a better report, not dealing with the inconvenience of data quality. Why do you need to do that? All right. If you're listening to IT, please screen IT that they are truly data acumen, data competent, and data literate, because a lot of IT departments are still in a service level agreement orientation, which makes them resistant. I'm not slamming the hard people here in AppDev. I'm not slamming IT people, but there is a new world in front of us, and we all have to learn more things. This thing of the data people have this, and we want you to listen to us and understand this, but we've got it. Actually, everyone else has to learn some more about data too, okay? Data's at the board level. I've got 3 clients now, because a lot of the work I do now are with CEOs and CXOs and things like that. It's a board agenda item. What are we doing about data compliance? What are we doing about the value of our data? You know, what are we doing about ethics and things like that? ROI is an important thing. ROI meaning risk of incarceration. Okay, I've had executives say, I don't want to go to jail because of data, all right? A lot of your pet analysts, your departmental heroes, your heroes driving those spreadsheets and writing that Python code, they might not understand the accountability of stuff they're doing, all right? That's another driver here. Your vendors are not your business partners in the real name of the business partner. They're your business partner in that they give you a product and you give them money, all right? All right. And you have a lot of high-end consultants who sniff opportunity in this area, all right? But they are just coming up to speed in my research on this. If you want something done and done quick and hammer it in, and you're not going to take any prisoners, then yeah, call the integrators. They're terrific. They're terrific at that. But the fine points, the people-intensive aspect of what we do, you need to do a lot of balance here. So a driver there is the market itself in terms of products and things is somewhat not sure of where it's pointed, okay? I think principles around data are really important. We get lots of points of light. We know all this data stuff works, but organizations need higher level principles so that as you build these little points of lights incrementally, they somehow come together. And data is anthropological. I mentioned this earlier. That driver is really forcing the issue on us. So goals are now requirements. We used to do 15 years ago when we were standing up some sort of data management program or neo proto governance program. We were doing it because the inconvenience of multiple versions of date or multiple versions of customer. All right, and that is a requirement now. Okay, we have to set our expectations higher because the risks are higher. So this is your thought process. This is a little prescriptive stuff here, okay? Look for new roles, all right? I would say in 5 to 10 years, roles in data, the data profession are going to shift. I know roles in the business area are going to shift. You're going to see more data skills picked up by quote unquote business people and more business skills quote unquote picked up by data people. There's going to be some movement there. Self-serving departmental use of data is going to become unacceptable. It should be unacceptable now because you get into hero cultures, and hero cultures aren't collaborative, all right? The spreadsheet is a prototyping tool. It's not a data exploitation tool. If you're an expert in a spreadsheet, that can get you to the hero culture level, but still got too many organizations where the spreadsheet jockeys rule the decision-making process. Data debt and data quality have to be addressed. They're no longer, well, maybe we should do a data quality program. No, you have to. Well, maybe we should take a look at our technical and our data debt. No, you have to, okay? You need formal valuation of your data in terms of its contribution to the bottom line, all right? We need to use our tools. I am not dissing integrators or consultants. I am not dissing tools. They are vitally needed. There are places for all of that in our market, but I think we need to know what we need before we go and get them, okay? We need to understand our culture, our scene, our marketplace, our anthropology, in your own organizations, and then apply the right solution. Never has there been more options to organizations. You've got individuals like myself, you've got regional boutique firms, okay, like you've got Doherty out of St. Louis where I live, you've got First San Francisco Partners, you've got what's the big outfit in Atlanta? I'm forgetting their names now, but you've got great regional people that can do this stuff. Then you've got the big five and the integrators, and they have their niche as well. And then you have all the tools. You have all the catalog tools and the data quality tools and the BI tools and all that. But you know, you just don't go out willy-nilly grabbing this stuff. You need to think it through. Your stakeholders are society. And with society involved and people and anthropology, then principles, because principles are statement of philosophy and behavior. And you must align with the direction of your organization. You can't, you can't put in a catalog and then go and look for a way to use it. And I still see that 60% of the time. All right. Yeah, you'll have it and you might get some use out of it, but boy, you're really missing an opportunity there. So some more actions here. Whatever you're doing now is your unofficial data strategy, okay? All right, and whatever your unofficial data strategy is, it's going to force some sort of data acumen or understanding, and it's going to force some sort of governance. Now, if you want to make the governance easier and the road to data acumen easier, then perhaps one thing you should think about is a data strategy. You can take 2 weeks and do a very coarse data strategy. You can take 2 years and do one that has absurd amounts of detail and probably isn't necessary, but something to definitely think about, all right? Really consider principles and data principles, and you can look those up, and they're in my books, and a lot of people will talk about them, and that's a topic for another conversation. A lot of us do foundational work. We're going to put the glossary or the catalog in first, and then we're going to put in the data governance tool, and then we're going to be all ready to do our work. And you know, I wish the world was like that, but it's not. The CEO, the CXO, I work with them. They don't care. They do not care. If you do it on pencil and paper and they get value, they're happy as clams. They don't care about the tools. You've got to, when you need productivity, get the tool. But if you don't know what the productivity angle is, hold off a little bit, okay? Some of you say, well, we're going to have to do data governance. Everyone's busy. Let's hire a data steward. That tends to be problematic, all right? There's cultural aspects to that really cause issues, all right? Data governance is manifested in how you get people to behave, to follow the ways that are prescribed by governance, all right? It's not implementing a tool. Data governance is a people-centric area. The more you can automate the tool, the more you can automate how to do a policy, the more you can automate the mundane, is great if you get the appropriate tool at the appropriate time. But never forget, this is about behaviors and about people. No matter how you approach this, think it's an enterprise context, okay? Okay, at some point in time, someone will have to change their behaviors. If you don't need to change any behaviors in your organization, then you don't need data governance. All right, because if everything is hunky-dory in the eyes of the organization, you're going to have a hard sell here. All right, so you got to be careful about that. All right, if you need to measure your current maturity, you probably already know what your current maturity is. I'm not anti-maturity stars. I love IMM, CMM, DCAM. I love those things. I think they're terrific to do, but we focused on that initial score. All right. The fact that you're even doing the survey means you already have a gut feel that you need to do it. What I like to use them for is your first metric, and they provide terrific capabilities models that you can use to build out your program. So I'm all for them, but don't use them the wrong way. Don't use them as a club to hit leadership over the head. Use them as a metric and a lexicon for you to implement stuff. The last thing is, if data is an asset, it has to be measured as an asset. It has to add value. Learn some accounting. I will sit in a room with some data folks and we'll talk about accounting and stuff, and they go deer in the headlights. So you know, you learn some numbers. So I got to wrap up here. Every report should be aligned to the organization. Data has to be addressed. Formal data oversight has to be there. All of these things that I've already talked about have to raise all the boats in the tide. All right. Use stuff that we've already learned. We've got lots of templates out there. You're going to hear about some stuff here in a few minutes. There's lots of books on it. No one should be reinventing a policy. No one should be reinventing principles. No one should be developing KPI scorecards, okay, from scratch. This stuff already exists, all right? This stuff can be hard. You know why it's hard? Because it's not narrow. It's not departmental. It is society driven now, it's anthropologically driven now, and those things are hard. You can do it slowly, do it incrementally, but just get yourself ready. The power of data governance is it can deal with these tremendously hard issues and challenging issues and take you forward, all right? It's only business as usual, folks, okay? All right, I'm not gonna read that to you because I've already said all that stuff, and Robert can send this out to people that want it, but to get Martha happy means being aligned, having some measurements, thinking about the enterprise all the time, educating leadership to think about it. The CEO is not immune from learning a few things about data, all right? And apply the lessons that we've been learning the last 25 years or so. That's who I am. Robert already talked about it a good bit. I'm gonna turn it back over to our other speaker and Robert, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. Jeff, you are up next.
Yes, thank you both for the quick introduction. So just to recap a little bit about what John was talking about here. You collect a lot of data. Just because you have data doesn't necessarily mean it's valuable to the business. So data is actually considered a valuable asset to the business when it can be effectively leveraged to achieve some business goals, some objectives, something the business wants to do. And this requires that the data is accurate, it's complete, it's consistent, it's timely, and that it's managed in a way that ensures quality and security. So essentially, effective data governance is the key to realizing the full value of data as a business asset. So what is that data governance? So well-designed data governance program will contain sets of policies, procedures, standards. They ensure the effectiveness and efficiency of your program. You need to be able to identify the owners, the stewards, the users, as well as establish some responsibilities for accountability for each. It should also include processes for compliance and the use of metrics to report whether you're doing well with your data governance program or there are certain gaps that need to be filled. So how do we actually get started with this? Now, it can be a bit overwhelming when you start to think about this. You're really beginning to question, how do I get this thing off the ground? There are a lot of factors to consider here, many questions of who, what, where, when, how. So the first place that people naturally gravitate towards are data governance tools. And tools are important, but there are some things to consider first. So whether you choose to build something or buy something, a data governance product, maybe you still have to develop the content, such as the policies, the best practices, and other pertinent data governance artifacts. So a common expectation for commercial data governance products is that the tool will provide everything I need. But although the commercial tools are good at managing the content, they don't supply any content. And the content is what requires the most amount of time to create. So starting with a commercial data governance product is a little bit like putting the cart before the horse, because you need the content in order to deploy the program. And as John was saying, just because I go out and buy a program, I can't really launch it until it's ready to go. So more time should be given to assembling the content, then decide on what's the best data governance program you want to purchase or use. So the next question is, what if I could reduce the time to kick off a data governance program? And this is where we introduce Compass. And what we like to say here is, don't start from scratch. As John said, a lot of this stuff is already out there. So Compass is an all-in-one solution for organizing and implementing a data program quickly and effectively. It provides the predefined set of policies, standards, procedures, and other governance artifacts that you need. And as John was saying, a lot of this stuff already exists out there. It's not rocket science. All this information is hosted in the cloud, so you don't actually have to install anything to get at this. It's straight from the cloud, so it's easily accessible for anyone. So with Compass, organizations can reduce the time, the effort required to design and implement a data governance program from scratch. So the predefined content can be customized to fit any specific governance needs, any particular industry you're working in. That ensures that the program is tailored to meet the unique requirements that you might have. So overall, Compass is a cost-effective and efficient solution that enables the organization to establish a data governance program quickly with minimal resources. Now, it's not a data governance software product we're talking about here. What it does is it augments your effort to develop one. Every data governance initiative is different. So we're not saying that you need to buy a one-size-fits-all data governance program, but there are some common components to quickly get you started. So let's take a look at that. Building a data governance program involves a framework, so some way to follow things. So Compass is organized into areas that support various data governance components, including defining the organizational structure and roles, so you know who's involved and what they need to be doing, some fundamental policies and procedures for managing data. Everybody knows you should have a data security policy, a data sharing policy, a data integration policy. These are pretty fundamental. Managing metadata is also very important. So you need to have a metadata quality standards and processes for implementing your metadata management. Business glossary, which really gives you the semantics about, well, what does that data mean? As well as any base level metrics for monitoring and measuring the effectiveness of your data governance program. So essentially here, when we look at this, Compass takes a systematic approach to data governance so that the organizations can ensure that their data is being managed consistently while also driving business value from the program for quicker results with minimal resources. So what we're going to do next is just take a closer look at some of these Compass elements. One of the first things we'll take a look at is templates. Having a structured page layout for data governance brings consistency, and it has many benefits. First, it makes the content easier to read and understand by organizing it into easily consumable sections. Second, it can improve the consistency across the content, making it easier to maintain and update. And third, a structured layout can help users navigate the content more easily, allowing them to quickly find the information they need. So in general, a structured page layout can make data governance content more effective and useful to the users. So let's take a look at an example. If we look here, we have a set of sections that define each page. And over to the right side is a little disclosure triangle. So you can disclose certain sections of the page to zero in on exactly what you want to look at. So this page structure is consistent across all the different areas of Compass. So they basically provide a consistent framework for capturing and organizing the data governance artifacts. So you get your consistency here. So the use of this template-driven approach can also streamline the creation and maintenance of the data governance content. So let's look at content next. It's always easier to edit existing content than it is to start with a blank page. Whether it's writing a data governance charter, creating a data governance policy, or designing a standard, starting data governance content from scratch can be a challenge, especially if you've never done it before. Having predefined data governance content can significantly reduce the time it takes to implement a data governance program because it minimizes the time needed to create the policies, standards, and procedures from scratch. And like I said, this is what takes most of the time and effort for data governance. So instead, your organization can leverage pre-existing templates and content that are specifically designed to address the common data governance artifacts. This allows the organization to rapidly establish the data governance program that is both comprehensive and tailored to specific needs. Also, and this one's commonly overlooked, predefined content can provide a starting point for discussion and collaboration among the stakeholders, which helps to accelerate the decision-making process, ultimately driving more rapid and effective implementation. Because everybody knows what they don't want, they don't always know exactly what they do want. So having something to start from is useful. So let's take a look at a sample. So what you can see here is that the description area's disclosure triangle from the template has been revealed. And we can see here we have some text about data stewardship. You'll notice that some of the text is in black, some of the text is in red. If the text is in red, it actually points back to a lexicon with the definitions that you can modify for each of the terms that are used within these sentences and paragraphs. Also at the bottom, you'll notice that there's a graphic. This is what we call a context diagram. Context diagram in the middle points out the function of governance. And the inputs are essentially, these are all the raw materials you'll need to gather and put into this idea of creating stewardship. And then the outcomes and outputs of what's built afterwards are revealed. So these are the kinds of things that you have to think about before you go ahead and buy a data governance program, because you're going to have to do these things anyway. Controls, these are the things that basically control what you can do within a function, as well as resources. This could be people, but it could also be systems, software, or any other things that help you do this particular function. All of this information here is completely editable. So you can change this, customize it, tailor it to whatever it is you want to build for your data governance program. Now, obviously in here, we talk about roles and responsibilities. So let's take a closer look at this idea of roles and responsibilities. You may be a data governance organization of one person, which means you have to wear all the hats and do all the work. Or you may be built into teams, and each team has some specific specialty that they do. But roles and responsibilities are crucial in data governance, as they basically ensure that everyone understands what they're supposed to do, and as it relates to managing data, and they also contribute to the success of the program. So like John was saying, everybody does data governance. A RACI matrix is a useful tool for managing these roles and responsibilities. So it easily, through a matrix, clarifies who's responsible, who needs to be consulted, who should be informed. So Compass manages role assignments through something called a RACI engine. So let's take a look at an example of that. So you can see here it's a standard tabular layout, and across the top there are essentially the data governance roles. Now, we've generalized the roles into three general areas. There's the business role of a business data steward, there's a technical role for a technical data steward, and there's an operational role for doing operational things like security. Any of these things can be customized, so that if you want to change the names to brand it or make it more palatable to your organization, you can. The first column on the left-hand side there talks about the compliance review process. These are all the steps that you need to go through to prepare something to go through a compliance process. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is actually workflow for these kinds of processes. So managing data governance content using a workflow process can bring many benefits to the organization. It helps to maintain consistency in the content and certifies that it meets the necessary standards. It allows for better tracking and management of content changes and updates, making sure that all relevant parties are informed and involved in the process as well. Workflow processes also help identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies in the content management process, allowing for continuous improvement and optimization. So using a workflow process for managing data governance content can help improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the data governance program. So let's take a look at a sample here. This is essentially a flow chart, but what we're looking at are three major areas. The first, let's say, area or swim lane is to check the submission for completeness. Do we have all the information that's required to be filled in the different areas in order for this thing to be reviewed? Assuming it passes all of that, then it moves to the next area where the actual content is reviewed for any potential change or modification to data or process or policy. And then, assuming it passes all of that, it goes to the publication, which notifies everybody that a certain change has been made and everybody is aware of it. Now, once we do this, we're going to need some feedback on how well the program is performing. So the next thing we'll take a look at is measures and metrics. So measuring the performance of a data governance program can help provide a number of benefits, including compliance metrics. Now, these metrics ensure how well the data governance program is meeting the regulatory and compliance requirements, like I just discussed. The second is the data change request turnaround time. Now, this basically measures how quickly data change requests are reviewed and approved by the data governance team. This is that whole bottleneck thing where we'll be able to determine if there's a bottleneck by measuring this. The data issue resolution time. So this measures how quickly data issues are identified and resolved by the data governance team. Then there's the policy and standard adherence, which is really just the crux of data governance, and that measures how well the organization is adhering to data governance policies, which we know drive behavior, the standards, which is essentially the measuring stick to whether it meets or does not meet the compliance. And so this also helps us with data security and privacy regulations. So by tracking these metrics, organizations can identify areas where their data governance program needs improvement and then take action to address any gaps. So what I'm going to do right now is turn it back over to Robert for some closing remarks.
Hey,
Robert?
Jeff. Yeah, Jeff, thanks very much indeed. And John, many thanks to you. For our listeners, we certainly hope that today's webcast has provided a solid understanding of the power of effective data governance. One of the most important or frequently asked questions we get is, where do we start? And working with John and using his readiness survey, Compass can launch a survey to gather critical information on 11 of the key categories, which can provide a logical place to start. And as you can see there, we can obviously convert that data into a bar graph or radar chart to present that information back to the organization. Jeff, go ahead and go to the next slide. So how can Compass make Martha's life easier? By following John's advice and Jeff's guidance and possibly implementing Compass, Martha can start implementing data governance sooner at a more affordable price and see the value being delivered sooner and for longer. Now, Jeff, you go ahead. I think we've got one more slide. So this whole time to implement is where the benefit kicks in by buying a ready-built solution that you can tailor to your specific needs. Removes a lot of the redundancies that you'd have to do creating this yourself. So basically, this is your build versus buy artifact that we're talking about here. Now, from what you've heard with John and what you've heard from Jeff in presenting Sandhill, if we have piqued your interest and you would like to learn more about Compass, we can certainly schedule a call and help you address how we can help you with your organizational data governance needs. Now, with that, we've got a couple of minutes left. I want to make sure that I did thank John for putting out the alert there to post questions on the question area. We do have a couple of questions that have come in, which we will address. If other people have got some questions for John and or Jeff, please put them into the chat. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get to the first question. So, John and Jeff, welcome you both back. If you can turn on your microphones.
All righty,
First question.
we're here.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jeff. First question, and again, I'll throw it out there. You can decide who would like to answer this. The question is, to what degree are change management and meeting people where they are with language and goals important?
It's the it's the number. Managing the changes in behaviors is probably your number one long-term success factor for governance. It is a people-intensive pursuit. I have done governance with no technology. I have done governance with some technology. I've done it with all the modern tools, and I've done it with Sandhill and Compass. Okay, and everything in between. But at the end of the day, it's about the people, and I'll stop. And if Jeff wants to add anything, he can certainly do so.
Yeah, I just concur with that statement. It is a process and people-driven activity, since you are really talking about behaviors and changing or modifying existing behaviors so that you start thinking about data is essentially really where data governance is most effective.
And I would jump in. This is Marie with Sandhill. Compass includes a significant sized communications management section in both planning, implement, and deploy, including communications templates and stakeholder analysis charts and things like this. So when we think of Compass, when we were designing it, we wanted to look at as holistic a data governance solution as we could. So those human factors are included, and including some learning, and also, like, we talk about employee roles also in the Compass.
Thank you, Maureen. So this next question, this is an interesting question because it with the advent of artificial intelligence, machine learning coming more into the mainstream, the question is coming up is why do we have to pay attention to data governance since tools like ChatGPT will obviously help in this arena. Any kind of
No, they won't. No, they won't. Sorry. I
well, that
didn't
was
mean
a
to stop.
question. Maybe no, that was a question. If we could maybe address that question, because I do know that it does come up. So
Okay, remember what this version of AI is, okay? And it's not Terminator AI. What you're talking about are sophisticated models that learn over time. They only learn what they're given. All right, you can give an AI model enough stuff and it'll tell you the sky is green and when it rains Skittles, okay? And it will tell you that. And ChatGPT will give you an erroneous answer if you point it some direction that's kind of, silly. All right, so first of all, keep that. Second of all, data governance is not it's not a data output type thing. It's not a knowledge output. It is the process by which that content is managed. So ChatGPT or something like that would be subordinate to data governance. It wouldn't be doing it. I mean, if you're thinking about ChatGPT has all the information, and you can say, well, where's all my data quality problems? And it goes out and looks at all your code and it figures out, oh, here's all your data quality problems, which is, by the way, it can conceivably do that. I've had ChatGPT do a data model. All right, at first glance, you can say, well, I don't need data modelers anymore. All right, and data modelers don't want to hear that, but at first glance, ChatGPT will build a very good primitive subject level data model, and it'll do just a fine job if you give it the right stuff. But how do you make that work? How do you apply it? How do you get people to behave ethically and rationally within whatever that says? Has nothing to do with the AI.
Jeff,
I agree.
yeah.
A lot of it is the learning part of the system. You have to tell it. You have to teach it. When you first implement any kind of machine learning or something, it doesn't know anything. It's like a preschooler, and then you have to keep feeding it information and feeding it information. You're the one that's telling AI how to work. So It takes a while.
Yeah, and it's like there was a great segment. There's been two really good, easily reviewable things on AI lately. One was 60 Minutes a few weeks ago. The other was John Oliver did a lovely and humorous sketch or coverage of AI. And the 60 Minutes one was pretty cool. But what it didn't say was this model is reacting to what people like. So the model said something about it referenced a deity. It mentioned religion, and the reporter was somewhat unnerved by that, which I would have been too. But remember, we live in a society that a lot of our fundamental rules and stuff have been founded by a certain ethic that goes back thousands of years. Okay, and all the tool said was something that people would like to hear. Just like, as Jeff said, the 4-year-old will say things that he wants mommy or daddy to hear because that's how they learn. Okay, so AI equals data governance is not correct. That's the wrong equation. Next question, Robert. I'm getting all wound up.
No. I think we've got one last question, and this is more for me. Is how is Compass priced? And because we're at the end of the hour here, but I'll just mention to folks. First of all, Compass is a cloud-based software as a service solution, and we price it on the number of contributors. So you'll find that we've got introductory pricing to get people up to speed, especially if you're a department of one or department of a few. Compass is an amazing jumpstart. And again, if you'd like more information, you can reach out to us at sandhillconsultants.com. You can go to our Compass page and contact us for more information if we have piqued your interest. So with that, yeah.
May I add something, Robert?
Yes, please.
May I add something?
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of tools. I study the tools. I get the price points. I know what happens. Very few organizations are priced out of Compass. Okay, it's competitive, and I'll just leave it there. Okay.
Thank you, John. Great words. With that, we're at time. I'd like to thank the people that have dialed in to listen to this. The recordings and PowerPoints will be made available. We will send them back out to you. I'd just like to extend my huge thanks to one of the best people out there in the community, John Ladley, for your time, gracious time.
Oh, is he here? Is he here? Oh,
I thought he was going to talk about me, but I guess I.
Well, I do have to mention
I thought he was going to mention E-Marie, but okay.
Well, yeah. Well, you know what? I have to thank all three of you, John, Jeff.
All right. Yes. Good crew. Go team. Go team.
Yeah.
And may the fourth be with all of us.
May the fourth be with us all. I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.